जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवर धारी जय गिरिवर धारी जय जय गोपी जन वल्लभा जय गिरिवर धारी जय गिरिवर धारी जय यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजना यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजना यशोदानंदन व्रज जन रंजना जमुना तीरा वनचारी यमुना तीरा वनचारी जय राधा माधव कुंज बिहारी हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे 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 कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्णा हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य नित्य गौर हरि बोल नित्य गौर हरि बोल Prabhupada, 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 Jaya, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya. Jai Ho Vishnupad Paramahansa Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Anant Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadada Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Ki Jai Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shamakun Radha Kund Giri Govardhan Ki Jai Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai, Mathura Dham Ki Jai, Ganga Mai Ki Jai, Jamna Mai Ki Jai, Srimati Tulsi Devi Ki Jai, Srimati Bhakti Devi Ki Jai, Gaur Nitai Ki Jai, Samved Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai, Shri Radha Goloka Nanda Ki Jai, Giriraj Govardhan Ki Jai, Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bol, all glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Sri Prabhupada. Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Prabhupada Shadega Krishna Satanamli Prabhupada Sahitya Prakasya Vatasa Chapacharu Namo Vishwadaya Krishna Prabhupada Shadega Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamina Namaste Sarsati Gaurvani Vachani Nirse Sunyati Paschat. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're starting a new chapter today, chapter 74, the delivery of Shishupal at the Rajasuya sacrifice. I'm going to not read the summary if that's okay with everybody. I'd like to take the time and just do the verse, and if we have time in the end, we can read it. But please go home and read. Homework. So we're going to start, we'll start with 1074-1. Shri Sukha Vacha Evam Yudhishthiro Raja Jara Sanvadam Vibho Krishnaya Chanubhavam Tam Shrutva Pritastam Abravit Evam Yudhishthiro Raja Jara Sandavadam Vibho Krishnasya Chanubhavam Shrutva Pritasam Abravit Evam Yudhishthiro Raja Jaran Sandavadam Vibho Krishnasya Chanubhavam Tam Shrutva Pritasam Abravit Evam Yudhishthiro Raja Rajasandavadam Vibho Krishna's Javastam Shrutram Vidasa Vajavit word for word meaning. Shri Sukha Vacha. Sukadeva Goswami said, Evam, thus, Yudhishthira, Raja, the king, Jarasandham Vadam, the killing of Jarasandh, Vibho of the Almighty, Krishnasya, Lord Krishna, Cha, and Anubhavam, the display of power, Tam, that, Shrutva, hearing of, Pritam, pleased, Tam, him, Apravit, he addressed. Translation by disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Sukadeva Goswami said, having thus heard of the killing of Jarasandha and also of Almighty Krishna's wonderful powers, King Yudhishthira addressed the Lord as follows with great pleasure. Please read. Sukadeva Goswami said, having thus heard of the killing of Jarasandha and also of Almighty Krishna's wonderful power, King Yudhishthira addressed the Lord as follows with great pleasure. We don't have the purports by disciples of Srila Prabhupada, but we'll read the tikas of the Goswamis. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says, in the 74th chapter, the Brahmanas worship Krishna at the beginning of the sacrifice. Shishupal gets killed and Duryodhana's pride is hearing about the killing of Jarasandha and the power of Krishna. The king was pleased and spoke. The Goswami says, on another day Yudhishthira spoke to Krishna. Yudhishthira is called a king since by the killing of Jarasandha he could rule without opposition. This is understood later. Because of satisfaction of Bhima on his killing Jarasandha, Krishna had manifested 4 arms, Anubhavam. Yudhishthira heard of his killing Jarasandha and Krishna's manifestation of 4 arms at that time. O Master Vibho, Sukadeva addressed Parikshit in this way out of great respect on remembering this mercy of the Lord to Parikshit's ancestors. Another version has Vibho. Yudhishthira heard about the power of Krishna, who was his master. And then Sanatana Goswami says pretty much what Jiva Goswami said. But then he says, thus, it is understood later. Okay, that was it. Yudhishthira heard of the power and above of Krishna, who attracts the heart for his killing of Jarasandha, according to the method described Tat. Or he heard of the indescribable Tat skill in killing Jarasandha, Anubhavam, and his greatness in freeing the kings. O Master Vibho, Sukadeva addresses Parikshit in this way out of great respect on remembering this mercy of the Lord to Parikshit's ancestors. Or you are most fortunate for being born in this dynasty. Another version has Vibho. You heard about the powers of Krishna. Okay. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakya Chakshuramitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Dadamayam Tadati Swapadantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavinda Vancha Kalpatarubhasya Kripa Sindhu Bhayevacha Patitana Pavnebhayo Vaishnavibhayo Namo Namah Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So again, Shri Sukha Vacha Evam Yudhishthiro Raja Jarasandha Vadam Vibho Krishnasya Tanubhavam Tam Shrutva Pritastam Abravit. So when in all these chapters, when there is either a BBT purport or no purport, I try to look quickly at the Krishna book and see what Srila Prabhupada himself said about these chapters. They kind of work as purports and sometimes. So I noticed 2 things. At the end of chapter 73 and the beginning of chapter 74, which in Krishna book 73 is Krishna returns to the city of Hastinapur, and 74 is the deliverance of Shishupal. And Prabhupada says in the last lines, he says the king Yudhishthira was naturally affectionate towards Krishna, but after hearing the story, he became even more bound to him in love. Tears of ecstasy glided from his eyes, and he was so stunned that he was almost unable to speak. And now, after recovering from that ecstasy, Yudhishthira becomes very happy. So Prabhupada says, King Yudhishthira became very happy after hearing the details of Jarasandha episode. And he spoke as follows. So, King Yudhishthira is so bound in love, as are all of the Pandavas for Krishna. In the Mahabharata, Arjuna's, and in fact, Pandavas' prema, which is pure, unalloyed, and selfless love for Krishna, is totally directed towards Krishna. And they serve as the ultimate examples, the Pandavas in particular. We see more descriptions of Arjuna, but really all of the Pandavas, every time King Yudhishthira speaks, the love just drips from his mouth. When he speaks to Krishna, when he says Janardana, when he says Madhusudan, anything he says, just the love drips from the sweetness of love just drips from his mouth. And they are the ultimate example of Sakhya-bhav, which is, as we know, the mood of loving in friendship of the Lord. And so they are fierce warriors in their own right. But their true love, their very deep love, is demonstrated through total surrender to Krishna, lack of their ego, and a very deep, close connection with Krishna, which basically transcends all worldly relationships. When we see the relationship of the Pandavas, and then we can see how it's demonstrated at various times in the scriptures, in the Mahabharata and the Bhagavad Gita, where starts out by, of course it starts out all the way through their childhood. Every time they're in difficulty, they either cry for Krishna or Krishna just shows up. Krishna has such a connection to them that he just shows up every time they need him. That's his friendship. That's his Sakhya-bhav. And Arjuna, in particular, demonstrates his love for Krishna when he chooses Krishna over his big, strong, unbeatable army. He's offered a chance to get thousands of soldiers, elephants, horses, horse riders, all kinds of weapons, all these Maharathis, all these strong, strong soldiers. But he just chooses the unarmed Krishna, who promised not to fight. But Arjuna just does not hesitate. And it just kind of defies the whole material logic. When you think from the material perspective, there is no logic. Why would you choose one man when you could have the whole army? But this is the love, the prema that the Pandavas have for Krishna. That they're just, or Arjuna is just happy to have him as his charioteer, as his friend. There is there is a lot of humility in their love. There's absolute faith. Like we see later on, we see that in spite of being, in Bhagavad Gita, we see that in spite of being the world's greatest archer, I mean, he's equal to the demigods in his prowess, but he completely submits his ego. Even though the description in Bhagavad Gita is of Arjuna alone, like in this dialogue and everything, but really everything that Arjuna does in his love and surrender, we see at various times all of the Pandavas do. If you get deep into the scriptures, we see at various times the stories where each of the Pandavas do that. Whether it is whether it is Yudhishthira with his big, call it bhala. I think it's kind of like a javelin. I'm not sure I could remember what it's called in English. But it's like javelin. Is that lance? Is that what Yudhishthira's weapon is? Yeah, it's kind of like that. It's a big stick with a point that he throws. That's what his expertise is. He's totally professed in that. And then Bhima has his club, and Sahadev has his sword, and Nakula has his sword, and he also has his bow and arrow. So they're very proficient in all of their weapons. But as far as Krishna is concerned, they are totally, totally surrendered to him. And when they surrender everything, including their ego. And like in the Kurukshetra, in the battle, Arjuna drops his famous Gandiva and totally submits himself as a disciple, he says. Shikshaste aham shadimam tvam prapannam. He says, I'm your disciple, I'm totally surrendered to you. Just teach me. Pure love. And he questions Krishna out of pure love, out of a true understanding, the true desire to understand the truth, and completely blindly trusts Krishna's guidance when Krishna gives it. So then we see Arjuna's love, even when he sees the universal form with all its ferociousness and everything, he just prays to show him the two-armed, beautiful form that he loves so much. And that is because Arjuna has this intense love, intense prema. So Prabhupada said that loving Krishna or Krishna Prema means to align our consciousness entirely with his happiness. We've been talking a lot about this in the last few days. Amrendra Prabhu and some yesterday with Leela Shakti. But our goal, according to Lord Chaitanya, is to develop this deep, deep, deep love for Krishna. And this deep love, the Krishna Prem, can only be developed when we align our consciousness with his happiness. That's shifting our life's focus from our own happiness, our own sense gratification, to his pleasure. So in our bhakti traditions, this state, the selfless state, is the highest spiritual goal, where we act not for our personal gains, but out of pure, unalloyed affection for Krishna, love for Krishna. Love in English is a very kind of casual word, but love in Sanskrit, the prema, is a very, very deep word. There is no equivalent in English for that. It's like you're everything. You mean everything to me. So all the steps that Arjuna Pandavas, that Yudhishthira now is taking in this chapter also, every one of them is in keeping with Krishna's pleasure, only with Krishna's permission, with Krishna's blessing, Krishna's desire. And so that's how this is being done. And we'll see that in the following verses. So what pleases Krishna from our perspective? We know in an esoteric sense, we know that the gopis please Krishna, their service pleases Krishna, the manjaris please Krishna, but we're not there. So what is practical for us in order to please Krishna? And Krishna is so kind that he tells us everything. He's given us a manual, and then Acharya has given us several manuals. Krishna has given us Bhagavad Gita, where he systematically told us what we need to do so that we can get to the stage where we can love Krishna in the complete surrendered way, for prema. So, Krishna tells us in Karma Yoga, he tells us that we should do everything for him, including our professional work or household work. So everything should be done as an offering to him. And then to accept the results of whatever we do